The land between the lakes is a national recreational area in Kentucky and Tennessee with a long and colorful history of paranormal phenomenon. Sitting between Lake Barkley and Kentucky Lake, the land between the lakes stretches 170,000 acres and was formed by President Kennedy in 1963. There's over 300 miles of shoreline and hundreds of miles of hiking trails. With not many man-made developments anywhere, the area is flourishing with wildlife and is a refuge to many animals that are endangered, like the red wolf and the bald eagle. With so much open land, there is, of course, plenty of area for an unknown species or an upright walking monster to hide and call home. Although it seems peaceful at a glance, there's more than one thing that goes bump in the night among the trails and trees of the LBL. Hundreds of witnesses, dating back to the days of trappers and settlers, have talked about ghosts, witches, vampires, specters, and phantom lights. In the summer of 2009, a woman was on her way to her parents' house when she noticed a strange light following her. She described her encounter as, "1 second, the light would be right behind my car, almost on my bumper, and another second later, it'd be a mile back. Then, it would be on my bumper again, and then simply disappear." The light was with her, back and forth, for about 10 miles. At this point, she'd called her dad, who was outside waiting for her to arrive at the house. The light followed her all the way to the house, but when she finally arrived and looked back, nothing was behind her, and the night was still. She's not the only one to encounter this phantom light. And even though the location differs from story to story, most other descriptions stay the same. The light follows you, but the distance between it and yourself changes in unexplainable ways before it disappears completely. Many believe it to be the ghost of a trucker that died in an accident, and now the phantom truck follows unsuspecting motorists through the LBL. In other instances of strange phenomenon, normal, everyday people are overcome with a sense of fear or foreboding when they enter the forest of the LBL. A man and his wife were camping on the northeast side of the LBL. They had pitched their tent on a hill while their friends camped down by the shore. Everything was fine during the day, but once night fell, the man began to feel this overwhelming fear that he couldn't shake. He'd heard the rumors of the LBL, but he didn't believe them. He then felt panicked. He knew he needed to move his tent, but he couldn't explain why. He just felt like someone or something was there with them, watching them, that they weren't alone. He moved his tent, and they survived the night. Now, one might think that he was overreacting, but soon after his encounter, some of his friends also went to the LBL and experienced the same exact thing. 3 people were there this time, and the same moment they sat down around the campfire, all 3 of them were overcome by the feeling of dread. Something evil was there with them. Something so evil that one of the campers started to cry. Then they noticed a face peering back at them through the darkness of the forest. They got up and left as quickly as possible. Then, of course, there's the Vampire Hotel. Now, this was really just an old abandoned structure that was the meeting spot of a vampire clan led by a man named Roderick Farrell. He claimed he was a 500-year-old vampire named Visago. He ended up killing a couple in Florida, got arrested, and convicted to life in prison. Life in prison must really suck when you're an immortal. Rumors are plenty, with ghost hauntings, especially the ghosts of Civil War soldiers and slaves. Rumors of graves being flooded to make more water area also leads to the belief that all of these acts have led to the manifestation of angry spirits. And here's just a tip. If you're in the LBL and you see a group of white-tailed deer, go the other way, because that's said to be an omen of danger. Now, even with all of these other paranormal phenomena occurring, most of the people are only familiar with the one scariest thing that's there. And that's the beast of the land between the lakes. These sightings go back over 100 years. The beast of the LBL is described like a typical dogman. Large and powerful. He's anywhere from 6 to 8 feet tall. Looks like a wolf walking around on 2 legs. He has 5-fingered claws that can tear into flesh. Teeth that can snap a bone in half. Thick, dark hair, and glowing red eyes. He's also said to have a stench to him that smells like rotting flesh, and an unearthly howl that can make a grown man piss in his pants. Some people in the area even say the beast has a taste for human flesh. Now naturally, there's plenty of theories on what this monster could be. The Shawnee tribe says it was the spirit of a skinwalker, a shaman of their tribe that was so powerful that even when he was killed in his wolf form, he was able to vow revenge and return as this bloodthirsty beast. Another legend says that it was a European man from the 1800s. He settled in the LBL with his family, but he had a disease, and this disease made him go crazy after nightfall. This disease was passed to his children and down to his children's children because it was genetic. Because of their nightly savagery, they lived in seclusion and never came into contact with the outside world, not even to go to school. Another theory is that this is a savage, bloodthirsty, predatory cousin of the Sasquatch, and that it always kills more than it can eat. French trappers in the area were among the first people to talk about the huge loup-garou that prowled the night. It killed their livestock and big game in the area. They would stumble upon huge bison with their throats ripped out and half eaten. They thought, what kind of creature could do this to an animal as large and powerful as a bison? Sometimes the trappers would go into the forest and disappear, never to be seen or heard from again. Settlers feared the monster. They swore that it stalked them in the darkness of night and killed their cattle. The beast was seen on more than one occasion, and as always, it was described as a 2-legged wolf, very hairy, glowing red eyes. They also said that the shriek that this thing let out was so horrible that it could echo through the night. In more recent times, though, people from around the LBL have claimed that the beast has attacked their animals as well. Dogs, cats, horses, cows, pigs, none of them are safe from the beast. They're found mauled, shredded, eviscerated, even dismembered. One man had a close-up encounter as it jumped from his stable while he was putting away his animals for the night. The beast appeared ready to attack, but instead it howled at him and ran back into the shadows of the night. Another man, though never having seen the creature, believes in the legends because of the noises he hears. He said whatever it was out there wasn't a regular wolf or a coyote. It was deeper, longer, stronger sounding than what would come from any regular animal. Another encounter happened in 1973 when a group of students were camping and encountered the beast of the land between the lakes. One of them went off by himself to pee, and when he came back, he was ghostly white and terrified. He had heard a large animal breathing hard in the shadows next to him, and had that same feeling of doom that other people describe. He knew something was watching him, and he knew he had to get out of there. Shortly after that, the others in the group heard loud crashing sounds in the bushes around their camp. Something was circling them. Even though they couldn't see anything at the time, they were all terrified nonetheless. That's when an unearthly howl, like nothing any of them could describe, ripped through the night, and they all saw the same pair of burning red eyes. The whole group took off to the Volkswagen and got the hell out of there. Whatever it was, though, chased them down and grabbed the back of their van. It was strong enough to stop the van. The driver managed to get away, and they drove back to their campus. When they arrived, they all noticed that the van was badly damaged on the back side, with deep gashes and missing metal. Another encounter happened in 1978 and was reported by Jan Thompson. She said her cousin was attacked by the beast while on his dirt bike. Jan and another cousin were sitting outside of their house and could hear Joe's dirt bike as he rode around the trails in the forest. At one point, they heard his bike pick up speed, and soon he burst out of the tree line and barreled towards them in a fearful frenzy. Once he came to a halt, Jan and her other cousin could see the fear on his face and asked him what was the matter. He stared at the tree line, and the other two followed his gaze. Then the dogs that were there started going crazy, barking and whining. The dogs actually tried digging their way out of the pen. And then Joe began to babble. He would say, "It grabbed me. Look at my leg." His pants were torn, and the two cousins could see fresh blood coming from what looked like claw marks on his leg. Then he told them, "It was on two legs. It followed me through the woods, along the path, from the old sawmill. It was so hairy, and the snout was so long. It walked on two legs. It ran on two legs." As he told them, he was gasping for air. He was trying to push the words out of his mouth as he was on the verge of hyperventilating. Jan said she could actually see the pulse beating through the skin where his temples are. Then, the three of them heard the horrible howl of the beast of the LBL. Jan described the howl as nightmarish intensity that invoked a profoundly deep sense of heavy dread. The dogs were now shaking in fear and staring at the forest, waiting for whatever it was to make itself known. It didn't take long for that expectation to be met. From the tree line, the beast appeared. It was walking on two legs. Jan described it like everybody else. A huge, hairy wolf walking on two legs. She was adamant that this was not a Sasquatch. The snout was way too long. This was definitely something else. The three of them ran into the house and locked the doors. They grabbed whatever they could to defend themselves, which ended up being kitchen knives. And then they hid under the bed, listening in terror as the beast moved around outside of their house. One of the upstairs windows shattered. The dogs were crazed, barking ferociously at whatever this beast was. But once Jan's aunt returned home, the beast fled back into the shadows of the forest. Now those are only a couple encounters reported of the beast. Hunters even shy away from the area and warn those that do choose to hunt there to be careful and always keep a watchful eye out for anything that might lead to certain death. Tufts of hair have been found, footprints have been discovered, and people have found what appeared to be a large den or nest that looks like something large was housed in it. Boy Scouts, boaters, campers, fishermen, they've all seen the beast at one time or another. They'll see them on the shore or in the forest. Hunters have found grotesque remains of animals that were ripped apart. Hikers have said they saw glimpses of the beast following them through the forest, but always being able to hide itself among the trees. Even the bison of today are still being affected by the beast. There are efforts in Kentucky to bring the bison back from the edge of extinction, and once in a while, one of the calves will go missing. When this happens, the rangers will see the bison on edge for days, obviously scared of something. They huddle close together in a protective formation, like they're trying to fend off some kind of predatory animal. There's also an encounter I found where a man describes what he thinks was a werewolf. I believed werewolves were fake until I saw one this summer. It was around dusk, and I'd already settled in, but it was still light enough to see outside. All of a sudden, my friend burst in, yelling about something in a neighboring field. I decided to entertain him, and I followed him out to a nearby field. We walked about half a mile, and I didn't see anything. I wanted to go back, but he insisted. So I reluctantly followed. And just before we got to an old slaughtering house, I saw a rather large canine about 70 feet away from us. It was sitting on its haunches, and I thought it was just a big dog at first, until it got up on two legs and ran towards the old slaughtering house. At this point, both of us thought it was a good idea to head for the hills, so we ran back to my house. It followed us. By the time we got there, it was dark, so we decided it'd be best if we went inside and locked up. Then came this smell. It was so foul and so terrible, I can only compare it to rotting human flesh. Then the thing ran in front of us, about 30 feet away. I estimate its height to be about 7.5 feet tall. We bolted into the house and stayed there the rest of the night. But the dogs in the neighborhood would not stop barking. We went outside in the morning, and the smell still lingered. In fact, the smell stayed there for 3 days. And on the night of the third day, the sound of a window being forced out woke me up. I grabbed a knife and went to investigate. I found that a large window pane had been forced out without breaking the glass. After that, the smell disappeared, and we haven't seen it since. There's no explanation for this animal, and there was no evidence, so I didn't post until now. I live near the LBL, and people tell stories like this all the time. So I ask you this, my dear creatures of the night. Do you think, with everything that happens at the land between the lakes, not just the Dogman, but vampires, phantoms, specters, everything that these people are claiming to have witnessed, is it a hotspot? Is it a place like Skinwalker Ranch or the Hoyabachu Forest where weird things just continuously happen without any kind of explanation? I'm a firm believer that there are places in this world where the veil between this one and the next are thinner. Hell, that's the premise of the novel that I published. That there's parallel worlds running right next to ours where these creatures exist, some that have the ability to go back and forth between our world and the next, where the veil is thinnest. Like Dogman or Sasquatch. Who's to say that these creatures aren't from another dimension? Maybe that's why they seem so paranormal or supernatural, because they can disappear in the blink of an eye. Where else are you going to find some kind of monstrous creation like the beast of the land between the lakes that had the ability to rip a person limb from limb and eat their flesh, and then disappear into the night without so much of a trace? Maybe that's why its DNA came back inconclusive and only kind of matched a wolf. Maybe it's because there isn't a species like it here. Maybe they simply live in a world parallel to ours. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to light up the comments on this section and start a full-blown discussion about what you think is going on at the land between the lakes, and Skinwalker Ranch, and the Hoyabachu Forest, and any other place that you think the veil is thin. Because that's what this channel is about. Exploring these options, discussing these things. I want to know your thoughts. You know mine. You know the thoughts of all the people whose encounters you just heard. So share yours. So I leave you with this. Like I said, I'm a firm believer that the thinning of the veil is a real thing. Maybe that's where all of these creatures come from. Black-eyed kids, Dogman, Sasquatch, hell, even aliens. Maybe they're not beings from the stars. Maybe they're beings from another dimension. I'm not talking about the multiverse, although that would be pretty cool. I'm talking about something completely different, so unexplainable that you would need Professor Arturo to go ahead and explain it to you, because I don't have the knowledge of explaining that kind of universe. Nighty-night, creatures of the night. Don't miss your chance to scream. And if you have an encounter, go ahead and email me, thesupernaturalist13@gmail.com. Or, if you want to read my book, which I think is pretty cool, follow the link below. It's available on Kindle, paperback, and hardback, and hopefully coming out with a brand new cover soon. I love you guys. Have a good night, and don't let the beast of the land between the lakes bite.